The year is 2025. The global aerospace industry, once a symbol of international collaboration and technological prowess, finds itself caught in the crosshairs of a trade war. At the heart of this storm stands Boeing, America's aviation giant, grappling with the consequences of tariffs imposed by the Trump administration and the retaliatory measures taken by the European Union. The stakes are high, with billions of dollars in orders, thousands of jobs, and the future of commercial aviation hanging in the balance. This is the story of Boeing's turbulent ride through the tariff war fallout. The impact of the tariffs was swift and severe. Boeing, a company accustomed to navigating complex geopolitical landscapes, found itself facing an unprecedented challenge. The tariffs, initially aimed at pressuring China on trade, had unintended consequences, rippling through the global supply chain and ensnaring Boeing in a web of economic and political uncertainty. This essay delves into the events that unfolded from May 7, 2025 onwards, examining the key players, the decisions made, and the far-reaching consequences of a trade war that shook the foundations of the aerospace industry. From the halls of Congress to the assembly lines of Boeing's factories, the impact of the tariffs was felt at every level, leaving a lasting mark on the future of aviation. This is a story of globalization in reverse, where the interconnectedness of the modern world becomes a liability rather than an asset. It is a story that highlights the fragility of international cooperation and the unintended consequences of protectionist policies. Above all, it is a story about Boeing, a company synonymous with American ingenuity and global ambition, struggling to navigate the turbulent skies of a new era. The first tremors of the impending crisis were felt on May 7, 2025. Ryanair, the Irish low-cost airline and a major Boeing customer, made a dramatic announcement. Citing significant price increases driven by the newly imposed tariffs, Ryanair announced the suspension of all new Boeing jet deliveries. This decision sent shockwaves through the industry, signaling the beginning of what would become a protracted and costly standoff. Ryanair's move was not an isolated incident. The airline's CEO, Michael O'Leary, known for his outspoken nature and cost-cutting strategies, had warned of the potential fallout from the tariffs. He argued that the increased costs would ultimately be passed on to consumers, making air travel less affordable and undermining the airline's business model. The tremors from Ryanair's decision were felt far and wide. Other airlines, particularly those operating on thin margins and heavily reliant on Boeing aircraft, began to reassess their own positions. Turkish Airlines, a major player in the European market, followed suit, postponing deliveries of new Boeing 737 MAX jets. In Latin America and Africa, airlines facing similar cost pressures began to explore alternative aircraft options, casting a shadow over Boeing's global market share. The domino effect had begun. What started as a targeted trade dispute between the United States and China had quickly escalated into a global crisis, with Boeing caught in the crossfire. The airline industry, already grappling with the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic and rising fuel prices, now faced a new threat: the unraveling of the global trade order that had underpinned its growth for decades. The trade war that ensnared Boeing was the culmination of years of escalating tensions between the United States and its trading partners. The Trump administration, pursuing an America First agenda, had imposed tariffs on a wide range of goods imported from China, the European Union, and other countries. These tariffs, according to the administration, were intended to protect American jobs and reduce the trade deficit. In the case of Boeing, the tariffs targeted aircraft-related components and raw materials imported from China and the European Union. The tariffs, ranging from 25% to 145%, were designed to make it more expensive for Boeing to source components from overseas and to encourage the company to shift its supply chain back to the United States. The European Union, however, viewed the tariffs as unfair and protectionist. In retaliation, the EU imposed its own tariffs on a range of American goods, including Boeing's iconic 737 MAX and 787 Dreamliner aircraft. These retaliatory tariffs, designed to inflict maximum economic pain on American companies like Boeing, further escalated the trade war and deepened the crisis facing the aerospace industry. The tit-for-tat exchange of tariffs created a climate of uncertainty and instability in the global economy. Businesses, caught in the crossfire, struggled to adapt to the rapidly changing landscape. The tariffs, initially intended as a negotiating tactic, had morphed into a full-blown trade war with no end in sight. Boeing, like many multinational corporations, had built its success on the efficiency and cost-effectiveness of global supply chains. The company sourced components and raw materials from suppliers all over the world, taking advantage of specialized expertise and lower labor costs. The tariffs, however, threw a wrench into this intricate system, disrupting the flow of goods and driving up costs. Canadian suppliers of aluminum, a critical material in aircraft construction, found themselves subject to U.S. tariffs. German manufacturers of advanced avionics systems faced similar barriers, as did Japanese producers of carbon fiber composites used in Boeing's Dreamliner aircraft. The tariffs rippled through the supply chain, forcing companies at each stage to reassess their operations and adjust to the new reality. The impact on Boeing was immediate and severe. The company's Dreamliner assembly plant in South Carolina, which relied heavily on imported components, was forced to stockpile inventory, driving up costs and creating logistical headaches. In Wichita, Kansas, where Boeing produces its 737 MAX aircraft, engineers scrambled to find U.S.-based alternatives for key components, facing delays and increased expenses. The tariffs exposed the vulnerability of global supply chains to geopolitical shocks. The just-in-time inventory systems that had become the norm in the aerospace industry were ill-equipped to handle the disruption caused by the tariffs. The crisis highlighted the need for companies like Boeing to diversify their supply chains and reduce their reliance on single sources for critical components. In the world of politics, lobbying plays a crucial role. It's where influence meets power, and decisions are often swayed behind closed doors. But you see, it's not just about external pressures. Internal divisions within parties can be just as impactful. These divisions, well, they often shape the direction of policies and the fate of leaders. Understanding this dynamic is key to grasping the complexities of governance. In the midst of chaos, opportunities often arise. This was no different. As the world grappled with unforeseen challenges, some visionary minds saw potential for groundbreaking advancements. They moved swiftly, capitalizing on the moment to innovate and lead. However, not everyone was on the same page. As new developments emerged, international tensions began to rise. Nations found themselves at odds, each vying for technological supremacy. Diplomatic relations strained, and the world watched with bated breath. The ripple effects were felt across global markets. Investors faced a landscape filled with uncertainties. Stock prices fluctuated wildly, and economic forecasts became increasingly unpredictable. It was a time of both great risk and great potential. Through it all, one thing became clear. This was a defining chapter in aerospace history. The innovations and conflicts of this era would shape the future of flight and space exploration for generations to come. The world stood on the brink of a new frontier,